Heinz Guderian's reputation rests heavily on his post-war memoir Panzer Leader, a work that has long been recognized as a problematic blend of insight, self-justification, selective memory, and outright fabrication. His wartime correspondence, presented here, must be approached with the same caution. Although written in the immediacy of events, rather than the reflective calm of the post-war years, Guderian's letters are no less shaped by subjectivity, self-perception, and the desire to explain, or excuse, his actions. They are ego documents, in the fullest sense, and cannot be read as transparent records of historical truth. With only limited exceptions, the annotations accompanying this collection are therefore concerned primarily with providing context, rather than systematically verifying or refuting every claim Guderian makes. Establishing the accuracy of individual statements often requires comparison with contemporaneous operational diaries, intelligence summaries, and command correspondence. Readers wishing to pursue this dimension further are referred to my own studies of Panzer Group II, 2nd Panzer Army, which draw extensively on such wartime documentation. Without this broader evidentiary framework, Guderian's letters risk acquiring an authority similar to that once afforded his memoir, when an earlier generation of historians reproduced his claims with insufficient critical distance. This danger becomes especially pronounced from the autumn of 1941 onward, as German fortunes on the Eastern Front declined and Guderian's own command came under increasing strain. The tone of the letters shifts markedly. They reveal a commander increasingly embittered, prone to assigning blame to superiors, subordinates, institutions, and circumstances, but never to himself. From this point, the correspondence oscillates between accurate observation, partial truth, and demonstrable invention. The letters thus offer not only a record of events, but also a window into Guderian's psychological state as the campaign against the Soviet Union began to unravel. Equally important for understanding this collection are the conspicuous silences within it. Most striking is the complete absence of any reference to criminal conduct on the Eastern Front, including the mass murder of Jewish communities that accompanied and followed the advance of the German army. Whether Guderian chose not to burden his wife with such matters, or whether relevant passages were later removed during the editing of the correspondence, cannot be established with certainty. Yet the total lack of even indirect acknowledgement, no expression of shock, concern, or moral unease, stands in sharp contrast to the intensity with which Guderian reacts to comparatively trivial personal and professional grievances. In a post-National Socialist context, such silence inevitably invites questions about what Guderian may have wished to conceal, and why neither his letters nor his memoir contain a single reflection on one of the most consequential crimes in German history. While silence alone proves nothing, it remains a historically significant absence. The letters are also revealing for what they omit in military terms. Despite occupying a senior command position with responsibility for a large sector of the Eastern Front, and despite his direct access to Army Group headquarters, the Army High Command, and even Hitler's inner circle, Guderian shows remarkably little interest in the agency of his Soviet opponent. Intelligence assessments, enemy intentions, and Red Army operational planning are almost entirely absent from his correspondence. Instead, Guderian's focus remains overwhelmingly inward, fixated on German resources, organizational failures, and decisions taken above his head. The implicit assumption throughout is that the campaign was Germany's to win or lose, largely independent of Soviet action. The inward-looking perspective was not unique to Guderian, but it is nevertheless striking given his first-hand experience of mounting casualties, declining combat power, acute logistical shortages, and worsening weather conditions. None of these factors tempered his determination to continue offensive operations. Throughout the late autumn of 1941, Guderian drove his panzer formations forward in a dispersed manner, without a clearly defined operational objective, toward a southern approach to Moscow, still some 150 kilometers distant as winter set in. When the Soviet counteroffensive began in early December, his forces were dangerously overextended and caught largely by surprise. In his letters, however, responsibility for this situation is consistently assigned elsewhere. The commander who had repeatedly disregarded orders and exercised wide operational autonomy now presents himself as a passive victim of circumstances beyond his control. Guderian's final letters from December 1941 are among the most revealing in the collection. In them he expresses despair at the collapse of Operation Typhoon and places his hopes in intervention from Hitler, whom he continued to view as a potential savior rather than a principal architect of Germany's strategic predicament. After a meeting with Hitler's chief military adjutant, Colonel Rudolf Schmundt, Guderian confessed to his wife that he no longer knew how Germany might escape the crisis. Yet even at this moment, he deferred to Hitler's supposed energy and decisiveness to resolve problems that were, in reality, structural and irreversible. This reliance on Hitler in the face of catastrophe is one of the clearest indications that Guderian had become overwhelmed by the realities of the Eastern Front. Despite their limitations, distortions, and silences, Guderian's wartime letters remain a valuable historical source. Read critically and in conjunction with other contemporary evidence, they illuminate not only the operational challenges of the Eastern Front, but also the mindset of one of Germany's most celebrated generals as his confidence, judgment, and command increasingly failed him. It is in this capacity, as testimony to perception, belief, and self-deception as much as to events, that the letters deserve close and careful attention. October 1st, 1941. My dearest wife, I don't want to let our wedding anniversary pass without paying tribute to you in abiding love and deep gratitude. You have brought so much happiness and sunshine into my life and stood at my side so faithfully and sympathetically in joyous and sorrowful times that I can no longer imagine existing without your presence. Therefore, allow me, on this 28th anniversary of the beginning of our common life, to plant a particularly long and tender kiss on your lips, in the hope and heartfelt desire that this imagined kiss will soon be followed by the real thing in twofold warmth. I come today with empty hands. I cannot even place a flower on the table for you, but you should at least know that I'm thinking of you, in spite of all tempests that these weeks bring. Since 30 September, my group has been on the offensive again. Whilst the right flank had to overcome severe fighting in bad weather, and, in the process, leave behind a whole host of motor vehicles stuck in the mud, things went well yesterday for Geyer and Lemelson. The coming days will show whether the initial success can be exploited. Yesterday, I was on the move the entire day, most of the time with Heinz's old regiment, which was at the front of the wedge and achieved a breakthrough 130 kilometers deep, with thankfully only minor casualties. Today, the offensive will be resumed, provided that the fuel suffices. I hope that the Russians don't have anything with which to promptly counter the swiftness of our thrust, and that we're therefore able to make good progress. 130 kilometers is half the distance from Berlin to Goslar. This gives you some idea of the significance of such a day. It would be nice if our success continued. Then an end would be in sight after all. Did you make the trip to Goslar and Ballenstedt and visit Stomka? I am very excited about your next letter and hope that the capable Main Secretary, Neubauer, from my staff found you and is bringing it with him. I am spending the evening of 1 October looking at your pictures, and I'm comparing photograph and watercolor. Both of them convey your essence in different ways, and it is very interesting to agonize over it, which says a lot. The watercolor is certainly more complicated. The artist has captured several moods, the photograph only the present moods, of course. I'd prefer to have the model with me, then loneliness and worries would fade away. My darling, stay healthy and remain such a sweet, good, indispensable life companion to me as always. For my part, I will attempt to thank you for it, and serve you in abiding love, till death us do part. Farewell, and finally, accept a long sweet kiss from your faithful Heinz. October 11th, 1941, my dearest wifey. Yesterday, I received post again, after a long interval, and that your kind letters from 14 and 19 September, with the soothing expressions of your sympathy for my situation, and your shared joy regarding our success, which came about after all. Let me thank you with an affectionate kiss. You can image how pleased I am that you empathize so fervently with me, despite the long separation, and that I have this one possibility to unburden my heart to another human being. That is infinitely valuable and liberating, because, as an older person, I am ever more isolated, and the young people increasingly keep their distance. In spite of the very nice way of life in my staff, I feel this more and more. In the meantime, my difficulties with senior authorities have been resolved. Instead, the weather god has played dirty tricks on us. Rain, then yesterday morning a snowstorm, frost in the afternoon and during the night, and today it's thawing again. The roads are abysmal and our advance naturally suffers as a result. We have defeated the enemy and encircled it in 2 pockets north and south of Bryansk. I managed the larger southern pocket on my own, and the other one together with the neighboring army. Only very weak enemy elements were able to break out. Today, fierce attempts to break out are taking place, which are sure to last for several more days, but I hope that the encirclement will hold. We can expect 50,000 prisoners. On the 3rd, we took Oral, and are now slowly fighting our way forward in a northeasterly direction against freshly arrived Russians with a lot of good tanks. As soon as the encirclement battle is concluded, and we have sorted our supply, things will hopefully happen quicker. We believe we've now destroyed the main mass of the Russian army. There can't still be many good forces left, but we shouldn't count our chickens before they've hatched, and war sometimes holds unpleasant surprises in store. Heinz's march route is unfortunately completely different to mine. He's heading in the direction of the Sea of Azov. Kurti, who has become a lieutenant by the way, is by all accounts hanging around in the vicinity of Leningrad, and I'm stuck in the middle between them. A reunion is thus out of the question for the time being. In this corner, however, both boys are experiencing interesting sections of the war and are getting to know an interesting region of Russia. There is little variety here in my area. Perhaps it will improve again, but it seems doubtful to me. I've heard from Kesselring that you have traveled to Kleinwanslaben, Goslar, and perhaps also Ballenstedt. Your next letter will report in more detail on this. Hopefully Goslar is not too annoying and disappointing for you. My panzer group is now a panzer army, by the way, and I've therefore been given the title of Commander-in-Chief. A large number of my colleagues feel elevated by in-chief and similar titles. This constitutes a synchronization with the other armies, which also has certain material consequences, for which reason I welcome it. Now we're hoping for good, dry weather, at least for 14 days, then the main part is done. Otherwise it could last much longer. Farewell, my sweet dear wifey. My thoughts are with you every day in faith and love. 1,000 long affectionate kisses on your lips and hands from your Heinz. October 15th, 1941. Dearest wife. Yesterday, Neubauer came with your detailed and loving letter from 9 October, which furthermore contained the adorable picture about the summer holiday. Shortly afterwards, the correspondence card from 29 September, even before your departure for Kleinwanslaben, arrived. I was very pleased about the good news from you and the relatives and acquaintances, and thank you very warmly for it. A particularly tender kiss for the cute little verse at the letterhead. Your wish will come true. Neubauer reports that you received him and were well and cheerful. In this way, I received a direct message from you and a greeting from an eyewitness, which makes me twice as glad. Your letter from 1 October from Kleinwanslaben is still on the move somewhere with the field post, which now needs about 3 weeks. But I'm already looking forward to it. This travelogue aroused many emotions in me, which in some cases trigger here in this disgusting country somewhat wistful feelings regarding lovelier and generally carefree times. Here, we are still severely impaired by the uncommonly poor weather. Winter has arrived. It hasn't arrived this early for 30 years, according to the residents. The troops don't yet have winter clothing, the antifreeze agents for the motor cars aren't yet here, the horses don't yet have any studs. As a result of the abysmal roads, operations over the last week could not be carried out in the customary, and now twice as necessary tempo. We're simply standing still, because in the entire army sector there was not a single solid road, and we now hope for light frost, which makes it possible to drive the lorries without damaging the motor vehicles. A lot is asked from Petrus, who normally does the opposite of what it's supposed from him. It is still almost a fierce fighting, and regrettably costly. From Heinz's regiment, 2 company leaders have been killed in action, including his former company officer, First Lieutenant Kraus, a particularly nice, capable, and outstandingly courageous man, who enjoyed the reputation of being bulletproof. It's especially pity about him. At Grossdeutschland company commanders fell the day before yesterday. Victory really doesn't drop into our lap, and then there's the cold and the wet with insufficient linen and clothing and a feeding that doesn't exactly improve. The longer the war lasts, the harder it gets. Neubauer told how beautiful our garden is and how colorful the dahlias are in bloom, and we sit here in snow and mud, and there's not a flower in sight. But I don't want to give you a heavy heart, dear wifey. One has to sing, "Let us cherish life." Otherwise we'll become serious, and that's not how soldiers should be, and one must be a good example to them, and bring himself to merriment, a daily new struggle. After an involuntary stay of several days in a pitiful nest, we have now moved on to a better place under difficult conditions, where we have found tolerably clean and heatable accommodation. Now we must clean up the Bryansk pocket, and then we intend to march in a northeasterly direction. Farewell for today, dearest, sweetest wifey. Your picture smiles at me and wakes the desire for a good word and a long kiss, for warmth, understanding, contentment, for conversation and love. Farewell, and allow your lips and hands to be kissed by your Heinz.